Today, we have a special guest from America. Her name is Violet. She is a teenager who aspires to be a journalist. She is really into learning about different cultures from all around the world. So, hello, Violet. Welcome to the Billion Insight podcast. How are you?
It's a pleasure to be here today, Shri. I'm doing fantastic, thank you.
Where do you live in the US?
I'm from Washington State.
So, as a teenager living in the US, what makes American teen culture different from other places in the world?
I would say what makes our culture different is that we have grown up in the lap of luxury, at least my generation, the Gen Z has. So we have a sense of first world priorities. We are
Mhm.
often considered disconnected with other teenage cultures around the world because we have grown up in luxury. So we have a huge sense of entitlement. Also, we live in a bubble, I would say. It's all American media. We don't have a lot of access to international media, I'd say. Purposely, people like to imbue in themselves the American culture only exclusively.
So you say you are not access to the international media and all, but how is that so? I mean, internet you can access whatever the website you want to access, right? Or you are saying that is the your country media is kind of project only the news which is relevant to US. Is that the case?
Yes, also, I'd like to say that people don't have a lot of knowledge about other cultures because they just surround themselves in American culture only.
Mhm.
That includes media, so they're influenced with one think tank, you could say. It's just revolving around them. They don't try to step out usually.
So as a teen yourself, as a teen, as a Gen Z yourself, you are familiar with the mindset of the Gen Z. So given this, what do you believe are the major challenges facing American teens today?
One of the major challenges, I believe, is the college application process. That's not so difficult, but it's the finances. So typically, your average American family will save up lots of money for the college tuition. It's so expensive in the States. There's also a lot of pressure on teenagers to know what they want to do with their lives, but oftentimes they don't really have a plan, so they're criticized for floundering, just not making good choices because they don't really know what they want. I would say we have all the resources to prioritize our goals for the future, but we're not good at utilizing them.
So basically, you are saying that education is kind of a bit of expensive side in your country.
Yes, if you want to apply for a higher studies, that's very true.
So what your thought about the social media? You know, there is a lot of talk about the social media in America, like TikTok and Instagram. Teenagers are obsessed with, addicted to that. How do you think about this?
I think social media can be positive and negative. It's a two-edged sword. On the one hand, we have access to a lot of different content, but there's so much of it at once that it's overwhelming for our brains. I mean, they've done case studies and it's shown over the years that our attention span has gotten shorter and shorter. So you can imagine the iPad generation in the West, especially, children are watching media from the ages of two, three. Their attention span is so low. On the other side of the coin, you could say, yes, they have a lot of access to culture. They are always following trends, but in some ways, I wonder if they lose a sense of their own identity when they're constantly following what their friend did or what their favorite influencer did instead of inventing their own ideas. It can be a great environment for creativity to flourish, but I always wonder if it can hamper creativity for some people who are not as good at distinctively showcasing their own identity.
You know, the social media problem is not limited to the US. It is kind of a global problem, right?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
As you said, right, yeah, social media is a double-edged sword. So how do you think, how can we address this issue? Because the teen is our future, right? I mean, next 20, 30 years, today's teen will be, I mean, save our country. As a teen, what do you think, how we can motivate them to be productive?
I would say guidance from their mentors, for instance, in our education system, having an adult who can present healthy ways from a young age to limit their internet access.
Mhm.
You know, you can be given a tool, but you have to be taught how to use it wisely. Nothing is inherently bad, it's just how it is used. So social media can be used either for good or for bad. It can affect your life positively or negatively. It's all about how educated you are in the use of that instrument.
So you are saying it's up to the mentor and the parents who can definitely use to limit teen screen time. If parents try to block a certain website or their teen, it can easily be bypassed.
Exactly. There are ways to counteract it, but it is concerning seeing the numbers of internet addiction, social media addiction out there.
Mhm. Currently, we are seeing that in your country, your government try to ban TikTok and all. So, do you believe this is moving in the right direction?
I would say yes, because most teenagers don't have the self-control to limit their social media usage daily. So I would say it's actually a positive thing.
Mhm.
Now, some people would say it's limiting our freedom, but at some point, freedom can be negative if it's not used wisely. So I would say that this is a positive thing. Speaking as a teenager myself.
But there is another argument is if you ban TikTok, but what will happen? There will be another social media app will be pop out, and there's Instagram also, there is Facebook, there is Snapchat. Can you ban all of them? No, right? So what's the point of banning one social media over others?
It's not really logical, but the main reason is because TikTok is the most popular one right now. But
Mhm.
if you ban that, then something else will come. So what's the point? It's just keep banning program after program, application after application.
Mhm. In what age you are exposed to the social media? Because social media culture began with the US, right?
Personally speaking, I was exposed to social media probably from a very young age. I would say 5 or 6. It's been there pretty much my whole life.
So today, people are exposed to social media when they're born. I mean,
Yes, the age of comprehension, they'll have
yeah.
an amazing grasp of social media. You see 3-year-olds making TikToks when you go out shopping or something.
So moving on, if you could change one thing about the perception of the US globally, what would it be?
I would change the perception that we are powerful, perhaps. Yes, I would say we are a superpower, but I do believe we also have weaknesses that we know internally. Maybe it's more culturally. For instance, I would say one of our greatest weaknesses is our ignorance as a society. I believe in my culture, we promote ignorance as being trendy. It's trendy to be ignorant, to be uninformed, which is actually a detriment to our future, especially with today's youth, with that being so commonplace and popularized.
Mhm.
It makes you concerned for the future generation.
Can you explain the ignorance part?
So it begins in our education system. Our education system is not very good, at least up until your higher studies. So university is pretty good. But before that, I would say our primary and secondary schools are suffering a lot. I would say that our curricula is too politicized these days. It's about
Mhm.
teaching you what to believe instead of teaching you how to learn. We just teach you what you're supposed to learn. So I know a lot of teenagers don't like reading books anymore because they only have to do that for an exam or a test. They just learn the information they're supposed to, but they don't actually enjoy the process of learning. So by the time they're out of school, they don't want to learn anymore because the way they were taught is exhausting. So it leads to a lack of knowledge. Secondarily, people
Mhm.
like this idea of being ignorant on purpose. It's trendy in my culture, like the just to act dumb, be into sports, like follow the trends, not actually spend time enriching your knowledge base.
So you are saying that one of the reason is because of the syllabus, the curriculum of up until the high school.
Yes, I would say it's lacking.
Mhm. Moving on, what's the lesser known aspect of American society or lifestyle that you think would surprise people from other countries?
I would say that a lot of people don't realize how big the US is. Now, I've heard this addressed before, but I'm going to state it again. The US is really big and really diverse. Right? The changes in culture from town to town or metropolis, you name it, are quite different. I could go to a town maybe 5 miles away and the culture will be different, all based on the immigrant population there. It influences the local culture significantly.
Mhm. You're saying that if you go to the in every 5 miles, you will see the different people, different culture. This is what you are saying, right?
Yes, we share a common American culture, but individually we just have our idiosyncratic elements in each individual locality.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Here in India, if you go, I mean, in every 5 miles, you will see different people with different culture, greeted with different languages.
Definitely, I've heard India is quite diverse.
Do you see any specific culture that influenced the American society significantly?
English and Scottish and German culture specifically.
Mhm.
So Scottish to a lesser extent, but especially English and German, we've had a lot of immigrants from those countries. Our founder fathers originally came from England, or their ancestors did. We also have a huge percentage of German immigrants, which have influenced our cuisine and
Mhm.
perhaps our work regimen. Our culture can be quite efficient in the workplace. When we have a project, we get it done. And I think that comes from the Western European no nonsense mentality inherited from down the generations.
If you could travel back in time, what period in American history would you want to experience?
I would like to experience the 1940s, to be honest. I'm a big fan of that era. Yes, there was a World War and there was a previous economic depression, but I
Mhm.
have a personal bias in that my grandparents were born in the 20s, so I grew up with a lot of media and memorabilia and nostalgia from that era, having known them. So I just feel like I'm an old-fashioned person and I like the old culture back then. I would say the original American culture. I'd say it changed a lot after the 1960s. On one point, I would say the civil rights movements of the 60s were very positive, but I still enjoy the nostalgic element of the pre-war era to post-war era.
What do you find the most interesting thing about that era?
I like the conservatism of people, but also the ability to agree and disagree in a difference of opinion. I think people, including, for instance, my grandfather, his name is Peter, he was from that era. He had such polite manners. I really love how that generation just was civilized and cultured. I think not everyone from then had good upbringing, but a lot of people then did. So I admire that.
Mhm. Okay, moving on. Are there any local tradition in the US that you find particularly fascinating or unique to where you live?
Yes, I am a big fan of the local culture here. So it's mostly lumberjack culture, for instance. There used to be a huge logging industry near where I live. I live in a very forested region. And I would say the people here love the outdoors. There's a huge emphasis on outdoor recreational activities. So the people here are healthier in general because they have access to the outdoors and there's a huge emphasis on it locally.
Hmm, that is interesting. So, moving on. You mentioned earlier that you are interested in different cultures from around the world. Could you please share what specifically sparked your interest in Indian culture?
I loved the music first. So I heard it on YouTube when I was 13. It really captivated my interest. I had never really studied about South Asia before. I really enjoyed the vibrancy. I feel like Western culture is really boring. I pretty much know everything about it in the mainstream media. So I was looking for something new and exotic. And at first, I think I viewed India with a shocked outsider perspective, but later, as I've become more informed over the years, I've gotten a more grounded perspective. I would say I'm pretty neutral, but I still never lost that spark inside of me that just fuels my interest in South Asian basic cultures.
Interesting. So, when did you first encounter an Indian song?
I was 13. The YouTube algorithm recommended me some Madhuri Dixit songs. I listened to those. I thought they were fantastic, and I haven't stopped listening since then.
So, have you ever participated any cultural event related to Indian culture in the US?
I haven't yet, but actually, this upcoming weekend on Saturday, I'm going to participate in a Holi festival in my state. I'm really excited for that. It's my first time.
So, have you seen any Indian movies?
Yes, I've seen a few. I would say I've seen most of the famous classic Karan Johar films.
Mm-hmm. Karan Johar, yeah.
Yes. Kuch Kuch Hote Hai, DDLJ. I love those films. They're really fun.
Since you are into Indian music and movies, can you name some of your favorite Indian singers?
Yes, I love Shreya Ghoshal, Arijit Singh, Lata Mangeshkar. Don't
Mm-hmm.
forget Mohammed Rafi, Isha Bhosle, Geeta Dutt, Kishore Kumar, Sunil Chauhan, uh, Monali Thakur. There's so many. I would lose count if I was to continue naming them. I will think of one song in particular that's influenced me a lot over the years. That was Prem Ratana Tantayo from
Mm-hmm.
Salman Khan's film with Sonam Kapoor.
Yeah,
That was the
sang by
first
Palak
Bollywood song.
Muchal, right? It's sung
Yes,
by Palak Muchal.
that was the first Bollywood song I ever heard. It's still one of my absolute favorites to this day.
Okay, in your opinion, what are some misconceptions people often have about American teenager?
I would like to say that people often think we're super shallow, very superficial. I would say yes, in some regards we are, but part of it's our culture or how we deal with stress in life. So we don't really reveal what we're thinking a lot because we are just trying to survive. We live in a dog eat dog culture. So each one is trying to survive and get to the top, king of the hill type culture, you could say. I would say that we mask a lot of things with superficiality and tons of friends.
Mhm. Do you like traveling?
Yes, I haven't had the opportunity to travel outside of the continental US, but if I get the opportunity, I definitely plan to visit South Asia and lots of other countries located in East Asia.
Hmm. And what about your country? Have you traveled within the US?
Yes, I visited most of the Western United States.
Hmm.
So you could say from South Dakota, Nebraska to California, Utah, Arizona, etc. Most of the states.
Can you recommend to our viewers what are the most underrated place in US to visit?
Washington State. It's my home state. I'm biased, I know, but really, it's so beautiful. Forget the eastern half. I'm sorry, anyone that lives there, but it sucks. My half is better. We've got a beautiful landscape. There's lots of people from other countries. You can probably find a Chinese or Thai restaurant in any small town that has only 5,000 people. I swear I've traveled all over, and I always find a Chinese restaurant in every town. I swear.
So where do you live in Washington State? Is it Olympia?
So I live in a small town, but I usually say I'm from Seattle because I'm close to there.
Okay. Can we talk about your history a bit, like the ancient history of America, like the Native Americans and the Mayan civilization?
That's funny you asked that question. Actually, I'm Indigenous myself, so I'm from the Lakota tribe from South Dakota. They are one of the largest tribes in the United States. So I
Hmm.
feel that I can share some useful information about Indigenous cultures.
Hmm.
Actually, I would say our cultures changed a lot after we were discovered by Christopher Columbus, obviously. That
Hmm.
was the domino effect for a lot of Indigenous cultures.
Hmm.
So for instance, if you were to mention different cultures that were affected, there are hundreds of indigenous tribes within my own country, but some of the more famous, I would say, civilized cultures, not just nomadic wander gather cultures, would be from Central and South America. There's the
Hmm.
Mayan, Aztec civilizations from Mexico. There's also the Incan civilization from Peru. There's a lot of indigenous tribes within the Amazon rainforest. There are tons of them. Most of them were affected by Spanish or Portuguese colonization. So a lot of what we know about them today is only partial. I would say we lost a lot of information. For instance, one example is I believe it was the Mayan civilization.
Hmm.
We lost, no, Aztec. We lost some of their written information because their records were destroyed by, in particular, some Spanish Catholic priests. At the time, in their
Hmm.
perspective, they believed that these were pagan, that it was going to hamper their efforts to colonize the people,
Hmm.
convert them to Catholicism. But in reality, we lost valuable pieces of information, which is quite unfortunate.
Hmm. So you are saying that lots of the, recorded evidence is lost. We don't know much about that, right?
Actually, the Aztec and Mayan cultures, they had written languages, but there was
Hmm.
a Catholic priest from Spain who destroyed some of the records after the
Hmm.
colonization when Cortez came to the Americas. They
Hmm.
destroyed it for religious purposes. Also, they wanted to change the culture. It's very unfortunate because we lost a lot of valuable information. Now,
Hmm.
the flip side of it, in the Incan culture from Peru, we
Hmm.
still have a form of written language called Kipu. It's a not language. I'll try to describe it the best I can. So basically, if you were to take some strings and attach them to another string and they hang down vertically like a waterfall, and then you tie different knots at varying spots, this would be Kipu.
Using strings called kipu. The positions, numbers, and colors of knots communicated certain complex meanings, and special tools were used to read the knots.
It was used to
Hmm.
convey information, and they had runners or ancient Incan mailmen, you could say, who would run from city to city with their mail or kipu. Unfortunately, we have lost the ability to read it, but there is still some way to crack it, perhaps. Who knows?
Hmm. Interesting. So, how popular is the ancient American history among the teenager?
I would say basic history has been covered in our primary and secondary education.
Hmm.
So we didn't have a knowledge about the colonization, the immigration, et cetera, et cetera. But it's usually someone who has an avid interest in history that will know the finer points.
Hmm. So, you said you want to be a journalist. Any specific reason why you want to be one?
Mainly, I want to be a journalist because I'm really interested in other cultures. When I was growing
Hmm.
up, I used to watch a lot of documentaries based in Asia. I remember a documentary about India just addressing different societal issues, and it really inspired me. I really want to not criticize or defend different political or societal issues around the world. I just want to inform people. I believe if in the motto "food for thought," that
Hmm.
would probably be my modus operandi as a journalist.
Hmm. That is interesting. It's kind of a rare interest, I would say. I'm glad that you have this interest. But today's everybody wants to be like, at least what we are getting the vibe from America is that, especially the teen, they are actually into this glamour world so much. They want to build their career as a actor or something.
Yes, I would say that glamour is quite influential. I'd even say I'm influenced by glamour, but perhaps mine has been influenced by basic glamour. I'm really into the Bollywood culture and all of that aesthetic.
Do you know the fun fact? Actually, most of the Indians they don't prefer it to call Bollywood. But do you know how the name Bollywood came up?
No, I don't actually. I would love to
Uh,
hear about that.
So when the Indian film industry began to existing, I guess it is 1930 or something. I don't remember the exact timeline. But then it was based in the Bombay. Current days we call it Mumbai. So that time Hollywood were so famous. Hollywood's very famous. So people actually combined these two words, Bombay and Hollywood, and made Bollywood.
That is really interesting. I think I heard that, the Bollywood industry actually made the first film before Hollywood ever did. It was actually a few years before Hollywood released like their first film or
Oh.
short film. Yeah, I remember reading that somewhere. It's been a long time though.
Oh, really? I wasn't aware of that. What I know is that the term Bollywood emerged many years after the industry began. Usually, we prefer to call it the Hindi film industry. We have many film industry in India, and the Hindi film industry is just one of them.
Yes,
The moving on. In America, you guys generally have the access to the cutting edge technology before anywhere else in the world. How do you think technology impacts the lives of teenagers in the US?
I would say that we are very blessed. We've had full access to technology since we were born, especially my generation. So we
Yeah.
don't know a world without technology. If my grandparents, God rest their soul, were still alive today, they would be very shocked to see how incapable I am to live without my phone for 5 minutes. I mean,
Mhm.
I have a fear of losing my phone. That's the stuff of nightmares.
Okay, talking about technology, how popular do you think the latest AI tech like ChatGPT and Google Gemini in your country? Or do you think there are still Americans who are not aware of it yet?
I would say the older generation.
Mhm,
For example, when computers first started infiltrating their way into people's homes, personal computers, my
mhm,
grandfather was very smart. He was a science teacher. He could have easily taught himself how to use a computer, but he chose not to. He was happy to live out his retirement just
mhm,
like he would have if there wasn't any technology. This was back in the 90s and the early 2000s. But
mhm,
I believe if that's how my grandfather chose to address it, then it can be different for each person. I would say there's young people even today I know that don't use social media or their phone much beyond texting and phone calls. It really depends
mhm,
individually.
mhm. Do you think every teenager are aware of this? They leverage this kind of technology today's?
Do you know what number one joke is?
Mhm.
Literally every teenager is going to graduate high school or any graduate really is going to say, "Thank you, ChatGPT. You were my number one supporter."
Yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, this kind of thing also I can see from my surrounding.
I think our generation is going to be monumentally handicapped with this whole AI crusade.
Yeah. So since we are talking about technology, there is often a debate that in US that iOS and Android, people are mostly inclined toward iOS because the iMessages. So what's your take on it?
I would say mainly I have an iPhone, so there again, I'm biased. But as an American who has used Android before, when I was younger, I would say that both have their advantages and disadvantages. So to be honest, I'm not someone who likes to do very advanced things with my electronics. I'm happy with the basics. And I don't like how slow Android used to be when I was younger, and I preferred iPhones. They were easy to use, they got what I needed done. Today, though, I think there's a lot of Android phones that can actually do more than your latest Apple iPhone releases. I think it's just copy and paste, or if you were making a smoothie, just add like one more different ingredient each time, but it's practically the same thing every year.
Uh,
So
yeah.
it's just a brand. It's just the luxury, oh, I have
Mhm.
an iPhone. I'm really trendy.
So how often do you use iMessages?
I barely use it, to be honest. I hate the iMessage functions. I prefer Instagram.
Mhm.
I use WhatsApp sometimes, which is not very common for Americans, but
Yeah.
I like to use it to talk to my international friends. But most of the people use like Facebook Messenger, iMessage, or Instagram.
So moving on, you know, America has produced so many great scientists, technologists, artists. Who is your favorite? I mean, who you think has influenced your life so much?
So I'm a fan of Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, perhaps Lewis and Clark. So they basically just made a route like to the Pacific Ocean. They were the
Mhm.
first Americans to see the Pacific Ocean, and I'm from the local area where they made their final rest. You could say like their final stop. I really like them, like their influence on culture. I would also say I'm a big fan of classic Hollywood stars from the 1940s to the 1950s.
Mhm.
For instance, there's Frank Sinatra. He was an actor and singer. Also, Marilyn Monroe. Yes, I love her. There's many. I like those people, to be honest.
Do you like Doris Day?
Who?
Doris Day?
How do you know her? First of all, your knowledge of American classic culture. I mean, my grandparents' generation. I mean, I'm air clapping for you, sir. That is impressive. I love her, literally. She's one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah. I have heard two songs so far of her, like Enjoy Yourself is Later Than You Think, that one, and K Sara Sara.
Yes, and you should also listen to her song "I'm in Love." Maybe it's not the exact title, but basically you probably heard it on TikTok or Instagram if you're active on those applications.
Mhm.
So the song is "I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love."
Yeah. I really like her energy, by the way. She's so good. She was so
Her
good.
music,
Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, she was amazing, honestly. I think she passed away a couple years ago. And here's a funny story about her. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been a super fan of hers for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, she always thought she was born in 1924,
Mm-hmm.
but she wasn't positive because there was some issue with her birth certificate. You know, this is back in the 20s. I mean, things can still happen, records could be fudged. Well, basically, a few years before she passed away, they found her birth certificate in some files they were organizing or something, and she was actually born in 1922.
Oh.
So she
Oh.
actually died when she was about 98 or 99 years of age.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on. Can you share a memorable experience that made you appreciate the diversity within the US?
Yes, whenever I see Indian families, I get very excited because I'm so happy that they're able to come to my country now. It's just one example of diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the fact I can literally try any food almost from any country if I just know the right location because those people are here.
Hmm. Interesting. So, do you have any Indian fan in US?
Actually, I haven't yet. That's a goal I have, but I have them online, just not in person. I have one
Mm-hmm.
South Asian friend. She's from Pakistan. Funny story. I actually really wanted to make a friend from South Asia, and I was desperate. It was just hard to meet them for me socially and where I live. So I was shopping one day and I saw this employee at the store, and I was thinking maybe she's South Asian. So I asked her, and she told me, "Yeah, I'm from Pakistan." So I started talking to her, and I was able to make a new friend, which is really great. I would love to meet new people. I'm just really shy, so it's hard for me sometimes. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
really excited to.
She's your friend now, right? You guys are hang out and
Yes,
or something?
yes. Whenever I go shopping now, make sure to talk to her and ask her how she's doing. It's really nice.
Oh, that's interesting. So that is the end of the podcast. Any final thoughts?
Yes, I love Punjabi culture and Diljit Dosanjh. If he ever gets divorced or takes a second wife, he can marry me.
Diljit Joshi, whoa. So did you enjoy the podcast? Was it fun?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very fun. You're a wonderful host.
Thank you. I just started out though.
Oh, thank you for letting me appear on your podcast. It's an honor,
Yeah.
honestly.
So before we wrap up, could you kindly ask our viewers to subscribe to the Billion Insight channel?
Yes, subscribe to Shree's channel, Billion Insight. He is an awesome creator and he's going to release more interesting content. You should definitely check it out. Subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhavlet, for sharing your experience with us today. We wish you all the best for your future. To our listener, thank you for tuning into the Billion Insight podcast. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes. And until next time, dream big and work hard. This is Sri signing out. Peace.